Hello, hello. Oh my goodness. Going live. What an odd experience. Hey, everybody. This is Kelly Janae with Ethereal Ecology Healing Arts. Give me a second here. I'm going to make sure that my folks in the Facebook group, the help or the Deep Healing Sanctuary, have a link to this. Do. Yes. All right. This is my first time doing this, if you can't tell. Yeah, it's odd. Okay, pop out chat, reactions, participants. Yeah, I'm not sure how to share this with them, but I'll give it to them afterwards. All right, well, let's get started. Hey, everybody. Again, this is Kelly Janae with Ethereal Ecology Healing Arts. Today, I just wanted to go live to talk about this topic of what I'm going to refer to as this life wave or an emotional energetic wave. I'm also going to talk about this in regards to how Barbara Ann Brennan, one of my foremost energy healing teachers, calls this phenomenon the life pulse. And the reason why I'm here today teaching you all about this really important concept is because there's parts of our natural cycles in life, which I'll talk to in more detail. We have these natural cycles of expansion and contraction and this pulse, this breath, this wave that we go through in life. And for those of us who struggle with our mental health, with our emotional health, if you have chronic depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, or suicidal ideation, any of these tendencies to go to those places, it can be pretty rough to go into the contraction phase of our natural cycle. It can also be pretty rough to be in the stasis phase of our natural cycle where we're supposed to be still and integrative. These can be rough places when our nervous system is out of whack. So this whole class is about learning how to ride our waves with more grace so that we can reduce our suffering, okay? So first of all, a little bit more about me, why I'm here teaching this to you all today. So everything on my channel is all about healing depression and anxiety from the inside out. You'll see on there I have a Reducing the Dosage series about my journey of withdrawing from a mood stabilizer from psychiatric medication over 3.5+ years. And as I was going through this withdrawal process, the whole time I was studying and learning and practicing holistic healing modalities. And ultimately, the one that I really latched onto is energy medicine and bioenergetics healing work. So I am a student at the Barbara Brennan School of Healing, which is a 4+ year energy healing university, studying to get my bachelor's in Brennan Healing Science. And along the way, I've also taken trainings in archangelic light. I've studied channeling for several years with a teacher and done shamanic work with a Blackfoot elder, and just really have been digging deep into all the different ways that we can actually learn how to heal ourselves from the inside out without needing to take substances or medication that ultimately doesn't really solve the root cause of our problems. And I'll say with confidence that gladly I've discovered that there is definitely hope for us people who want to heal naturally, right? Who want to take this more natural route to feeling better, even if you are struggling with really intense depression or anxiety, the feeling that you don't want to live anymore. Been there, trust me. It's been a lifelong challenge, my mental health, and really feeling okay in my body in this world. So that's why I teach this and why I'm so passionate about these topics. So let's dive right in. Okay, so this class is about what Barbara Brennan calls the life pulse, or what I'm going to talk to or refer to as the life wave. So as I said before, our cycles in life, they flow, right? We have these moments where we're really expressive and creative, and maybe we feel more social and things like that. And then we have the other side of that spectrum where we feel like we want to be alone in solitude. We just feel more inward and more like we are wanting to reflect rather than express. And in between those two kind of, you can think of this as a sine wave. I like to think of it that way. So at the top of the sine wave, there's this expansion, like, okay, like I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm going to a workshop, I'm whatever it is, going traveling. And it's great and it's fun and it's woo, and I'm learning stuff about myself. Okay. And it's usually a lot of times we love that part of life, right? We love expanding and it helps us feel good about ourselves. And on the bottom of that sine wave, we are all very familiar with this if you're watching this video, the low. The low. There's highs and lows in life, right? And then there's all those things in between. But what this class is talking about specifically is how can we limit the amount of suffering and pain that we have at the bottom, in the low of our natural energy cycles. How can we actually use this vital part of our natural cycle of energy flows to restore ourselves deeply, so that when that next creative wave comes around, we're feeling more balanced. And the whole thing about learning your own cycles is that you're able to then predict, in a way, what you're going to need after a big expansion, after a big trip, after a big work day. You can predict what you are going to need in terms of self-care. And it's a new level of self-awareness and self-knowledge that gives you the power to not go so deep into the rabbit hole every time that it comes around, because learning that it's going to come around, that low is going to come, and usually it's going to come on a regular basis. There's always patterns. There's patterns in life. There's patterns in nature. So learning to identify your own patterns and how you respond to the stressors of daily life, or bigger stressors from bigger moments in life, whether they're positive or difficult, then you're going to have much more resilience to actually dealing with life and the flows of it. Okay. So you'll be able to surrender more. So as we're talking about our human cycles, think about the corollaries in nature. Think about the ocean tides. Think about the moon cycle, the seasons. These are predictable things that we count on, that we know happen. But more often than not, because so many humans we're so disconnected from our nature. We think we're separate from nature. We're absolutely not. We are part of this earth and part of the universe. So we too are in these cycles. So the more that we can insert ourselves back into the equation of I am nature, the more we start to learn how to let go of attachment to this positive, expansive wave, and resistance to the low. In Buddhism, they talk about the middle path, right? And I've seen this explained in, this is us in life. We're highs and lows and highs and lows and highs and lows. And we're so attached to the top and so averse to the bottom that we create extreme waves of suffering every single time we fall from the top, inevitably. And when you see a sine wave like this, you can also see it as a circle, because it's literally just a circle. This is the same energy as this. But when we see it as a circle, we realize it's a closed loop, that it's whole. The Native Americans really understood this concept of the medicine wheel. It goes and goes and goes. And no matter where you are on that wheel, you're still equally important. You're still equally worthy. You're still equally lovable. It's just that when we go to the bottom of that wave, sometimes it can really bring up all of the things about ourselves that we do not like very much. So we'll get into that in a little bit. So like I said, we've got these specific parts of this cycle. We've got this is how Barbara Brennan explains this in 4 different parts. The first part is stasis, or you can think about this as stillness. You're kind of just still. And then there's, whoa, this expansion. Wow, we're happening. And then inevitably, because nature has to balance itself, there's another stasis in between where we have the opportunity to integrate what's been going on. And then there's the contraction, coming back into ourselves, and the stasis. Okay. So we're constantly in this pulse, this breath, breathing in and out. Okay. And the contraction phase is what's really that place that I think a lot of us get stuck. In our culture, we are really addicted to the expansion. We want to grow. We want to be the best. We want to excel. We want to succeed. We want to get the thing. We want to reap the harvest. But we really have a hard time with the opposite side of that. We have a hard time with being quiet and still and waiting and listening. We also don't often give ourselves enough opportunity to rest. I mean, so much of us are not just sleep deprived, but rest deprived, space deprived. If you're somebody who works for 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, do you go home and give yourself 8 hours of rest? So there's an imbalance in the way that we exert ourselves versus what we nourish ourselves with on the other side of that when we're not exerting. I know people personally in my life. I'm one of my mom. I am from the apple tree of let's exert constantly so we can avoid our hard feelings. Okay. And that's been my whole journey is, okay, how do you learn to actually relax in that period of time where I actually need to relax and restore myself? What I find in a lot of my clients is that I've had people struggle with self-care in those moments, always feeling anxious, not being able to sit with yourself at those times, like let's say after work. That's a huge time where it's kind of a contraction's happening, right? It's like you're going towards the sunset. It's going towards nighttime. Your energy is contracting. But what we want to do, because we're so used to exerting ourselves and putting ourselves out and putting all the energy out there, that when it starts to come back to us, we feel overwhelmed. We don't even know what to do with it because our nervous systems are typically, when we have chronic depression and anxiety, suicidal ideation, typically to me that shows that there's a nervous system dysregulation problem to begin with. So if we do not know how to give ourselves the ample amount of space and time between our exertions in life, we will exhaust ourselves. I think most people are exhausted. And for me, that exhaustion comes up in my mental health. For some people, that exhaustion comes up in physical health, okay? So knowing that you have chronic mental health problems, it's really just a symptom of how your body trying to tell you, hey, can you please rest? Can we find a way to restore? Can we find a way to integrate everything that you just did? And so this is a physical phenomenon. This is something we need to do to nourish our nervous systems. We have to take advantage of the contraction phase in equal and opposite proportion, if possible, to the expansion phase. Now, if you think about that logically, like we exert ourselves for 8 hours a day. Even if you're not working 8 hours constantly, if you go into the office, you're engaging with people. You are constantly energetically connected to everyone around you, working on something, meeting expectations. That's exhausting. That's expansion. That's exertion. That's service. But in order to fill your cup, you have to go home and also nourish yourself in the same intensity that you put out into the world. And so this is a really deep imbalance that we have. You could think about the exertion as the masculine, and then the feminine is that part that nourishes and takes care of us. And that feminine part is really lacking, even in a lot of us women, but in everybody really, in terms of our ability to give ourselves what we need in that moment. And I'll just give you a little bit of my personal experience with this so you can get maybe a better idea of what I mean by the difficulty of the contraction. So let's take, for example, a training week at Barbara Brennan School of Healing at the healing school I'm in. We get together for 4 days straight, and we're doing intensive healing work and learning and healing practice on each other for 4 days. That is an expansive time. During that time, I'm learning so much. I'm growing. I'm having big revelations. I'm connecting with people. I'm going through deep healing processes, exerting a lot of energy and emotion. And then, so I found that after those weeks, I definitely go into a contraction, at least within the week afterwards. And our contractions are going to match, like I said, our exertions. So for me, for the longest time, lacked a self-care regimen or enough real awareness of the need to take care of myself and rest deeply, that those contractions would be so intense and terrifying. So imagine being someone with damaged self-esteem. That would be a problem in my life perpetually. A person who's been suicidal ever since she was about 14 years old. A person who has struggled with depression and has extreme social anxiety, going through a really intense week and then being thrown on the other side of that with very little support systems, not really knowing how to ask for help still, learning how to do that. Yeah, it's like all of the negative thoughts, all of the intense emotions just come to the surface during that contraction phase. It's almost like a sponge squeezing itself out. We can't hold on to all that stuff, especially when we're growing and we're expanding. So every time we come into that contraction, it's like letting go. But before we realize that we're letting go, we just think that we're experiencing all of our worst fears all at once. And my nervous system would get so out of whack. And pretty much on a monthly basis, for a couple of years there, I was going into suicidal like rages every month, where I was really having a hard time functioning, and really just starting to wonder, like, do I really just need to die for this to end? I got through that by learning to surrender to the fact that life is going to be a wave and that I'm going to find myself in lows and that there's actually a perfect patterning to that. So our contractions are actually there to help us, like I said, let go. Let's let go of the stuff that we don't need anymore. And those things might feel like they're coming up and like screaming at you. And that's why having nervous system regulation practices like yoga nidra, yin yoga, meditation, taking a bath, receiving a massage, talking to a friend, crying, all of these things are really important to make time for during the contraction phase, right? And in between our contractions and our expansions, so that we can stay ahead of the rabbit hole that we're inevitably always kind of floating above. During the contraction, and during the kind of down wave to it, we can start to notice in our body, energy's going lower. My mood's starting to decrease. Okay, that might mean it's time for me to rest more. It's time for me to be more gentle with myself. What do I need? It's always a good question to ask. What do I need? Without judging ourselves, because I found that in this process of learning my own patterns, there's a lot of self-judgment. Like, I shouldn't feel this way. I shouldn't need this much time. I shouldn't need this much rest. But that's just because I grew up in a world and a culture that does not teach you how to take care of yourself at all, whatsoever. Okay. So of course, I thought that it was wrong for me to take time for myself and that I shouldn't need that. But we do. We do. We're natural body beings, okay? We need that time in the contraction to integrate what we just experienced. You can't have these big expansions and always be expanding. We only have so much capacity in our physical body to handle that. And we need to be able to let go, integrate, reflect, so that we can rest and restore our nervous system before we go into that next stage of expansion. And during the contraction, there may also be a lot of releasing of emotions. Again, it's like that sponge getting squeezed, and we're letting go of all of this watery, like, oh my gosh, it's just, there's so much to cry about. Crying is such a wonderful release for no matter what emotion you're feeling. Really, it's very helpful for the nervous system. And I'm going to say the nervous system a million times, because at the end of the day, this is all about regulating our nervous system, strengthening our nervous system so that we can actually live a holistic and healthy life without going into these such intense states of emotional overwhelm. So yeah, these phases tend to be hard for people who struggle with depression, anxiety, and low self-esteem. It's usually at the peak of the contractions that I would get really suicidal. And the other times of the month, I'm expanding, I'm growing, I'm this and that. And then it's like, oh my God, I hate myself. I'm a horrible person. And it's like bipolar, right? And that's actually bipolar depression is what I was initially medicated for, well, the second time around. And it's the first time around I was on an SSRI that did not work for me and made me manic, therefore bipolar episodes, therefore mood stabilizers. So, but I don't know that I truly believe that that a lot of people who are diagnosed with bipolar are actually bipolar. Like this, learning how to be with our cycles, we'll start to learn that we're all kind of bipolar. And the extremity of a person's bipolar tendencies is really dependent on that person's ability to take care of themselves on a daily basis. If we're neglecting ourselves to the extremes, we're going to end up in a rabbit hole, and we're going to be we're going to be tearing apart our life and our friendships and relationships, left and right. And that's, so this is why self-care, nervous system regulation is at the center of all this. We have to take responsibility for this and realize that, oh no, I'm bipolar. No, you're not. Most likely you're just need to learn how to be with your own natural cycles in a more harmonious, healthy way. Okay. So yeah, a lot of people struggle with these parts of the cycle. Reading my notes. I am reading my notes. Yeah. So this life wave doesn't stop. It just keeps going and going and going and going. So it's great to learn how to notice your own wave in your own life and how that shows up for you. So having self-awareness and self-knowledge around your own personal patterns of when you're feeling your best and when you're feeling your worst and in between, this is going to help you to be a better steward of your own health and, advocate for yourself what you need. If you know that after traveling for a long time or like if you travel far away, like I do sometimes for work, then you might really need a couple days off after you get home to rest and restore. There's just learning your edges is important. Learning your edge in life. Like this is an edge, and learning to know when you've crossed over your edge, because we do cross our edges quite often. And I think this is one of the main reasons why we get stuck in cycles of depression and anxiety, is because we are going past our edge. Either that or we're judging our edge. We're saying that shouldn't be my edge. I'm going to stomp right over it. But it is your edge because your nervous system is only so strong. And yeah, so having self-awareness paying attention to your moods, your thoughts, your energy levels on a daily basis if you can. I really find that all of us do have a life pulse on a daily basis. I tend to start contracting, 5, 6 p.m. And if I don't have a healthy thing to do during that time, I can go into like a bad place. I used to go into like substance use at that time. And that's not healthy for me. So predicting what we're going to need and setting ourselves up for success on a daily basis really helps limit the amount of times that we're stuck in a really deep, dark place that's hard to get out of. So journaling can help with this, using a calendar to just mark use a simple scale, 1 out of 10, how am I feeling today? And over time, you might start to notice some patterns. My partner started doing that for me, unbeknownst to me, every time I would have like a crisis, and it was around 2 weeks. Each time was about 2 weeks apart was my little crisis moment. So it's good to know that, because if I know that I go into a crisis every 2 weeks, then I can start to realize that that's not really the crisis in itself is not really something to worry about. It's just that I'm over and I didn't get enough rest or restoration, and I need to focus more on my self-care. So that helps me not go into all these assumptions, conclusions, blaming during that time, and rather to just say, okay, I'm overwhelmed. I'm gonna figure this out. I'm gonna do something about this before it gets any worse. So in addition to having self-knowledge and self-awareness, you need to create space and time for your nervous system to regulate and integrate. So for me, what that looks like is regular yoga practices. I really highly recommend Yoga Nidra. It's the number one thing I recommend to all of my clients who struggle with depression and anxiety. Yin yoga is also amazing. Both of those are designed to calm the nervous system. Meditation, having a regular meditation practice. I know a lot of people who have anxiety struggle with meditation, which makes sense. So do I, even after having a meditation practice for almost a decade. I find it hard sometimes to meditate truly. So having a recording can really help, because I don't think we're meant to be doing everything alone. It can create a really stronger container to listen to somebody guiding you through a meditation. It's just a lot easier for your mind. And then receiving a massage or body work or acupuncture, doing something nice for yourself, getting your toes painted, whatever, painting, going on a hike, whatever it is that you need to do. Just make sure that you are creating as much space and time in your busy schedule as you do for exertion. Just plain exertion, work, and things like that. You have to restore yourself if you're going to be healthy and happy. And then my third recommendation is to really increase your emotional skills. So a lot of people really have a hard time with emotions. I find this to be true I learned this from myself. I had a very hard time understanding what the hell was happening whenever I would go into these contractions and things. But I realize now there's just a lot of emotions that are unprocessed. And when we're not in a sad or intense state, we often can skate right over our emotions until they all come bubbling up to the surface when, we're in that inward place. So it's really important to get to know emotions, what they are, how they work, why they're important to get out of our system and feel and move through our system. I highly recommend a book called The Language of Emotions by Carla McLaren. That's a really wonderful book to educate yourself about how you can be a better steward of your emotional health, and how that really ties into mental health is huge, and also regulating your nervous system. So that's all I got for you guys today. I'm amazed I got through that in 30 minutes. And in the future, let me know if this is a topic you'd like more information on. I might do a formal class on it. But for now, hopefully that was enough information about this natural cycle, this wave, this pulse that we go through. on a daily basis, a weekly basis, a seasonal basis. It's good to know where we are in our wave in different areas of our life as much as possible. And this is really more of a feeling, it's an intuition, and it's recognizing the symptoms, recognizing when you're out of balance. I will say, if you are perpetually depressed, chronically anxious, suicidal, you are already out of you are beyond out of balance. Like, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with you. I'm just saying you have crossed your edge and you are overwhelmed and you need support. It is not sustainable to be in that place every day of your life. And so I really highly encourage, if you're somebody who's in just this, I can't get out of this state, I'm suffering so badly all the time, I really highly encourage you to reach out to somebody who can help you, a professional who can help you. That might be a therapist, it might be a psychiatrist. If you really are at that point where you're like, I need something to stabilize me, that's your choice, your prerogative. That's what I did at some point too. Or if you're looking for a more holistic way to work through these deep feelings and thoughts and sensations that you're having that are getting in the way of you living your life, then I do encourage you to take advantage of this 1 hour free introductory session that I have. It's called a Feel Better Naturally session. And in this session, we will go through what it is that you're facing right now, how you're feeling in your body, how that's getting in the way of your life, and what you would like to have. Where would you like to be? And my whole work is based around getting somebody from that state of intense emotional dysregulation to a place of a better baseline where you are feeling normal, more rested, more stable on a regular basis, and learning how to modulate your fluctuations when they happen, because life is a series of ups and downs, as we talked about in this video. So I'll make sure that you have a link to that free session. You have to apply, and then I'll approve you, and we'll chat for an hour, and then from there we'll see if we're a good fit to work together, because bioenergetics and human energy field healing is really powerful for the nervous system and for teaching our body new ways of being, in addition to the deep processing work and emotional skills that we learn together. So, all right, y'all, it's been a pleasure. I hope that you are doing well on this day. Pay so much beautiful attention to yourself. You're worth it. Your life matters. All right. Peace and love.